Let's see. Good morning. Ashley, are we good to go?
Yes, we are.
Okay. It is 11:15, so I'm gonna get us going. I'm gonna call the Public Works Committee to order. And if we could please put information on participation up, that would be great. Thank you. We continue to meet, but please know there are several ways to get to stay not get engaged, to stay engaged. If you would like to join our meeting and provide public comment, you can find information on our website, meeting times and agendas on the city's website under the meetings tab. If you're joining us via Zoom today and would like to provide public comment, please use the raise and lower hand feature, and I will call on you to provide comment. If you are joining us by phone, you can do that by lowering your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to mute and unmute. You can call us and leave a voice message. You can call 406-552-6012, and you can email us at council@ci.missoula.mt.us. These meetings are recorded and can be accessed via YouTube and MCAT. And if we could get a roll call for attendance, please, Ashley.
Anderson,
Present.
Becerra,
Present.
Contos,
Here.
Harp,
Here.
Hess,
Here.
Jones,
Present.
Merritt,
Present.
Ramos, Cheryl, Vasica,
Present.
Von Lossberg, West.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we have minutes to approve from September 22nd. Are there any changes to those minutes? Heather, I see your hand is up.
Martha, can you promote me to a panelist, please?
Ashley, do you think you can do that for me?
Oh, here it comes. Thank you very much, ladies.
Okay. Any changes to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, those will stand approved. And we will allow for public comment at this point. I see one person on the attendance. Please let us know if you would like to provide any public comment by raising your hand, and we'll let you provide comment. Okay, seeing none at this time, we will move to our first item on the agenda, and that is the Flynn Lowney ditch acquisition from Hellgate Valley Irrigation Company, and Jeremy Keene has that item.
This is Logan. I'm actually going to make the presentation if that's okay.
Of course it is. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Logan McInnes, the Deputy Director of Public Works for Utilities. And I'm not sure, how am I supposed to do the PowerPoint? Am I supposed to share my screen? Is that the way we do it? Okay.
I think that's the way we normally do it.
Do you all see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. So this item is for,
Logan, maybe if you can make it just a little bit bigger or in viewer presentation mode might be.
oh yeah. I'm not sure how to do that in this version. Let's see.
That looks better.
Oh, oops, that's not what you wanted.
Oh,
Sorry. I apologize. I'm not sure how to get rid of the preview mode on the left. Anybody wants to tell me how to do it? I'm happy to hear about it.
I am not the right person to ask.
On the, you just had it over there, right next to reading view. It says slideshow.
Is
Click
that
on
how?
that and it should do the
Okay.
slideshow. The one right next to that.
Yep. Slide sorter.
No, to the right. To the right. No, you were just over right there. Yeah.
That thing right there. Slideshow. Is that
That should have worked.
Now, if you go to, there's an option to switch, go to display settings,
okay?
and then there should be an option in there to switch the monitors, swap views.
So is that, are you seeing the full screen now?
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you all for the IT lesson. I apologize.
We
for
all
my
learned something today.
lack of ability. Okay, so this project is the Flynn Lowney ditch acquisition. And Jeremy brought this as an informational item a while back. I don't remember exactly when. So hopefully you're all at least familiar with the project. Just to kind of give you an overview, the blue line is where the Flynn Lowney ditch runs. So it's diverted off the river, right behind Imagination Brewing. And you can see kind of where the blue line parallels the riverbank, crosses North Russell, just north of the river, and then it runs up to Mullen Road, eventually across Mullen Road, parallels Mullen Road out to Reserve, and then it's back in a pipe under Reserve through across Walmart's property, and then mostly an open ditch, on the south side of Mullen, then it crosses over again to the north side of Mullen, and then obviously splits a number of different ways to serve various properties out in that area, this Sutup Cane area. Some background on the Hellgate Valley Irrigation Company. They've had issues with maintaining the ditch and keeping enough water in the ditch, and it's been very expensive for them. We engaged in conversations with them. This came along about the time of the Mullen build project. So the red lines sort of show all the roadways that the Mullen build project will ultimately construct. And so you can see a number of places where the blue lines cross the red lines, and those, it's a large ditch, and those are very expensive structures to construct. So you'll see there would be a crossing at Mary Jane if we don't acquire the ditch. Also a crossing at George Elmer near 44 Ranch, crossing up at England Boulevard. These would be smaller ditches, but still, costly structures to construct. And another one up, in the future part of George Elmer north of England Boulevard. So that's really where the project started, is recognizing that we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building these expensive ditch crossings. And then, became aware that the ditch company had issues with, the ditch really meeting their needs anyways. So, when we had the conversations with the ditch company, they were willing to consider selling the ditch assets to the city. And then the money would be used to drill wells for the large active irrigators. And then there would be compensation for the other shareholders of the company that aren't getting new wells drilled for them. And they took this to their shareholders, and with a majority vote on August 23rd of 2021, they did approve the agreement to sell the assets to the city. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the benefits of acquisition, and there really are many. So I've already talked about the reduced cost to the build project. It's going to reduce the future development costs in the Sutup Cane area, from building those structures. But the ditch also creates a real issue with stormwater, because the ditch leaks so much water into the shallow groundwater system that if the ditch were to remain there, we end up with a much more expensive stormwater solution, because we always have to maintain separation between where we discharge stormwater into the ground and where the groundwater levels are to make sure we have adequate treatment in the soils. So, and then there'll be future structures having to cross in these developments too. So there's a lot of ways that this acquisition is going to reduce the cost of developing in the Soo-Tupkane area. The diversion structure itself in the river creates a lot of issues. And then, a lot of fish get trained into the ditch system and they never make it back out. So hundreds of fish, including bull trout, get trapped in this ditch system every year. And that's been demonstrated by Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And then the diversion structure itself, and I'll show a couple pictures later, but it's really pushed the energy of the river onto the south bank, and it's created a lot of erosion problems on the south bank of the river. And so by eliminating the diversion structure in the future, it gives us a lot of opportunity to improve how the river functions and to get that hydraulic stress off of that south bank. So that's the protection of existing infrastructure near the baseball stadium. Like I said, I'll show some pictures in a minute. We're about ready to lose the Riverside Trail as a result of this erosion that's going on. And then the baseball stadium is right there. So it does threaten the baseball stadium and the infrastructure in Silver Park if we don't make some changes. And then, maintaining the agricultural use and reducing the cost of maintenance for the irrigators. They were very supportive of this project because it's going to give them a well that they can just turn on anytime. There's always going to be water there. They're not having to put excavators out in the river to dam up gravels and to put Jersey barriers and rock and other debris into the river to try to force water into their ditch. So they're definitely on board with this project. So improve safety, river access, and recreational opportunities. One of the funding sources that we were able to receive is a grant from the Future Fisheries program. And the folks at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks were very supportive of this project. It was, the local folks, that was really their highest priority. So, not only is the sort of the diverted main flow of the river up against the south bank, it's causing erosion, but it also makes the Silver Park boat launch very hard to use and really dangerous. The currents are very swift right off the end of that boat ramp, and the water gets very deep very quickly. So this is an opportunity to reshape how the river, the shape of the river, I guess, in the future. This project that we're proposing today is just acquiring the ditch assets. So the future work to save, to modify the bank erosion and to modify the boat ramp and things, that's all a future project, but it wouldn't be possible if we couldn't acquire this ditch and the ability to get rid of that diversion structure that takes up a lot of the active river channel. So, we are, the benefits also relate to the water rights. So the owners of these, or the shareholders, are going to get new water rights in their name. So currently they don't have a water right in their name. The water rights are held by the ditch company. So it's certainly benefiting those individuals to have a new source of water and a water right in their name. And then, a lot of the land historically irrigated by the ditch is developed, and you can see it in the background of this picture. It's just, this is an area of Missoula that's developing. And so a lot of the historic acres are now no longer being irrigated. So that frees up portions of the water right that can be transferred to in-stream flows. And so that's a separate part of the water rights work that's ongoing, is to make those transfers. And then other potential opportunities, there's land for housing. This is a large ditch and easement, 20 to 30 feet wide. And so there's a number of places where additional housing can be built in the future if those easements go away. There's opportunities for parks, for green space, and I think I already mentioned the stormwater management. It gives us a lot more flexibility with how we can maintain stormwater in the Soo-Tupkane area. So I'd like to talk just a little bit about what eliminating the ditch structure could mean for redesign of the river channel. So we've had a number of meetings with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. They were willing to hire RDG, a river design group. This is the kind of work that they do, to provide some sort of schematic designs on what this could look like if that diversion structure were to go away. So the line sort of down the middle of the river, the station shows what's called the Thowwag, or the deepest part of the river where the active channel is. And that's not where it is today. Right now it's really up against the south bank. But if we can get rid of this diversion structure, gives us all kinds of room in the river to reshape that bank, to take those erosive forces away from. This is the area that's where the erosion is really severe, and that needs to be filled in. And then, the boat ramp. So it lets us push that Thowwag out a bit from the boat ramp. The ditch currently runs over here. They're really excited about the opportunity to create a side channel, because side channels provide excellent habitat for fish and other critters in the river. So that's another great opportunity that removing the diversion structure, would allow us to make those improvements. And, some restoration kind of along the side channel. There's a structure here that dumps water back into the river. That'll all have to be removed. And again, this is all future work, but these are just kind of showing us what could be possible in this area. I probably don't need to get too much into the details, but this sort of shows the fill that's going to be needed to where the bank is eroding. And then also just some fill at some fill that'll be required along the boat ramp to help to make that more functional for people. Here's a couple pictures of that erosion that's going on. You can't quite see the trail in the picture, but it's right behind the chain link fence. And this is about probably a 20-foot nearly vertical bank, pretty dangerous. Obviously trees and things getting caught there. And this is really kind of a big hole, and it's maybe a little hard to see from the pictures, but the bank should be about out in here. And so it's really creating this great big scour hole in the riverbank. And you can also see it in this picture to the left. And it shows the baseball stadium right behind there. So the trail's about ready to be lost into the river. And then, the baseball stadium sits down below that. So once that bank is gone, the trail's gone, then you got water in the baseball stadium. So it's going to be a great opportunity to be able to make those improvements. And in the foreground here, you can see some of the debris that's been placed to try to keep water into the ditch. There's a section of Jersey barrier. I don't know if that's it or not. That may just be some wood, but lots of rock out in the river. And they have to get out there with excavators periodically, and that's never very good for the sediments in the river. So here's some exhibits that we've prepared for the acquisition documents. Just kind of want to run through this one on the left shows sort of the properties out on the west end of the ditch. So the sort of green dash lines are all the various ditch laterals that we would end up acquiring these easements. So there's one that runs kind of north. There's several that run out to Grant Creek. There's 3 basic ditch alignments that all run out there. The red lines have been piped, 44-inch, piped a section of that a number of years ago. There's other little sections that are culverts here. So anyways, we will end up acquiring all of those easements for those the green dashed lines. The map here to the right is the sort of the east end of it. Shows you, where the ditch starts along Riverbank. There's various sections that are piped, as you can see. The red lines again are pipe sections. The green dash lines are open ditch sections. A section of this along Mullen Road, if you can see my arrow, MDT. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, no, that's it. MDT relies on a section of this pipe and ditch section for stormwater. Like all of West Broadway, storm drainage dumps into the ditch. So we can't just eliminate that portion. So we're working with MDT. We need to enter into an agreement with them. That's going to become theirs to maintain. Not sure yet what the ownership of the ditch will be, but we certainly want them to be liable and to perform the maintenance because they need it as part of their storm drainage system. And I'm sorry, I haven't asked it, any questions. If you want to interrupt me along the way, I'm certainly happy to take questions.
See, Heidi has a question. Go ahead, Heidi.
So I have a question about the specific, I guess, area and what that process with MDT looks like. I know one of the sections right there that's piped goes right underneath Western Cider, and it's been a challenge for them because of obviously the impact it has on their site and where they can develop. So I was wondering, in this process with MDT, are property owners that are impacted by the ditch also going to be a part of that, or what will that process look like?
Sure. So, the portion that MDT needs is, there wouldn't be impacted by Western Cider. So it's mostly this portion along Mullen Road. I think there's some storm drain inlets along this piped section too. So I think that also would have to be maintained by MDT. Certainly the section east of Russell, that portion doesn't need to be maintained as a pipe or ditch. Our stance at this point, I'll kind of address that in a little bit, is, the city intends to, own these easements. And, a number of properties are going to benefit significantly from the easements going away. So our stance at this point is, once we get the acquisition approved, if we get it approved, we would like to contact the various property owners, and we intend to sort of come up with a number if somebody wants that formal easement to go away, we would like for them to participate in the cost of this because there will be significant benefits by the various landowners. So that's, I guess, how we're intending to address that at this point. Did I answer your question adequately?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that works for now.
Okay. I'll move on to the acquisition cost. The total estimated cost of the project is $990,000. $727,000 of that would come from transportation impact fees and water utility development fund. And the remaining funding, kind of talked a little bit about what those sources are. So that leaves about $263,000 that we needed to fund. So I mentioned the future fisheries grant for $50,000. Trout Unlimited has pledged cash of $45,000 between the local and state chapters. Clark Fork Coalition has a third-party foundation or a donor that is supportive of the project and has pledged $80,000. And we've got some in-kind water rights work that Clark Fork Coalition has agreed to perform. That's estimated around $30,000. They've got some outside funding to help cover those costs. And then some of the water rights work that is needed to make these transfers. We requested some funds of about $58,000 from the Missoula Redevelopment Agency, and they approved that recently. And I don't remember the slide. I probably should have given more information. So the $990,000 total cost estimate, the actual cash to the Hellgate Valley Irrigation Company is $804,000. So the remaining work is Missoula Water is taking on about $100,000 to drill two test wells, one for the airport and one for the Klaus property. So that money wouldn't go through the Hellgate Valley Irrigation Company. That's work that we would perform ourselves. And then, the rest of it is sort of the water rights permitting work. So a lot of due diligence has gone into this. We have a team that meets on Zoom every week. And so it's kind of like to summarize the efforts that we've made to date on due diligence. A lot of it I've already sort of addressed here today, but I'll kind of blast through it. So the ditch easements, we wanted to understand what is it that we are acquiring. And, things like the MDT needs to continue to use that ditch. So they're aware of that, and we're working on an agreement with MDT. So that issue is still in process, but we don't see any major issues occurring with it. As I mentioned, we intend to hold on to all the easements, but we'll agree to relinquish them for a cash contribution to the project. We're still working on what that number should be. Water rights is clearly a big portion of this. It's probably the most valuable asset we're acquiring. So we had a meeting with the NRC several months back to identify a path to change these water rights for irrigation wells and for the in-stream flows. That process is expected to take 12 to 18 months, but we don't see any major obstacles to that being successful. We've got consultant scopes in hand to initiate that work immediately upon approval by the city council. And then this last bullet, Clark 4 Coalition has agreed to complete the in-stream flow change applications. And they have an arrangement where they will be compensated by the Columbia Basin Water Transactions Program. And then, we expect to get some additional compensation from that same program for the in-stream flows. We just don't know what that number is because it's going to come out through the water rights process. How much of it's 40 CFS is what the flow right that the ditch company owns. And so we don't know, perhaps half of that will be available for in-stream flows and half will be required for the irrigators that are going to continue irrigating with wells. So depending what that number is, then there should be compensation from the Columbia Basin program that would be available to help with future phases of the project. I mentioned the airport well, so we're continuing to work with the airport. We've agreed to drill them an irrigation well, which Missoula Water is in need of new production well sites. And it's very difficult to get a new well permitted in developing parts of town because you have to be more than 100 feet from any stormwater sump, any sewer main or manhole. And so it gets really difficult to find locations where you can get production wells approved. So the airport obviously has a lot of property. You can get a long ways from those sources of contamination. So it's, a very exciting opportunity for the city to find a production well site on airport property. They're very supportive of that effort. So basically we'll drill a test well, we'll move their portions of the water right to it. They have different opportunities they're pursuing, possibly with the local food coalition, those are things kind of outside of our involvement, but we've agreed to drill a well and to transfer a portion of the water right. And we will use the well as our test well to determine, how to design these new production wells. So we're still negotiating a memorandum of agreement with the airport regarding that test well and the future lease of production well sites, and don't see any major obstacles in that process. The Klaus well, as I mentioned, is another well that Missoula Water is interested in drilling as a test well, but providing to Dale Klaus as an irrigation well that he can use to irrigate his property along Mullen Road. We actually own that the site where the well will be drilled, so we don't need to work out ownership and leases. And so we do have a memorandum of agreement executed with Mr. Klaus on that. And then just the diversion structure, there's no immediate work required at the diversion structure, but as I've talked about previously here, there's a lot of work needed over the next few years, and we'll be working with lots of partners, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and other funding agencies and things to get that diversion structure removed and to redesign the river to function better. So what are we asking for today? The recommended motion is to approve the acquisition of the Flynn Lowney ditch. Oops, I apologize, I got a typo in here. Waiving all contingencies per the July 22, 2021 purchase agreement between the Hellgate Valley Irrigation Company and the city of Missoula, and authorize the mayor to close on the property. And then kind of next steps, staff is still working with the HVIC, Hellgate Valley Irrigation Company board, on a final set of conveyance documents. And working with their attorney, we don't see any major obstacles there, but we can't move forward with that until we have council approval of the project. So thank you. That's all I had for today. I'll put the motion back up, but are there other questions that folks may have?
Thank you, Logan. Great presentation, and this is a good thing to do for our community. Jordan, go ahead.
Thanks. I guess if it's all right, I'd put the motion on the floor to approve the acquisition of the Flynn Lowney ditch. And then I'd like to speak to the motion, and I also have a few questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, great. Logan, I wonder if there's been any analysis as to I mean, these benefits are substantial. You listed out reduction of direct costs to the build grant, reduction of development costs in the Setupkane area, on and on. I mean, benefits to fisheries, benefits to water quality. Has the city been able to quantify or place a value on any of these benefits?
Yeah, I know Jeremy made a bit of effort in that regard. I don't know if he wants to address that. I don't really have information about that. I mean, it's clearly they're enormous, but the monetary values, it's a little hard to pin down on some of these things.
Sure.
I can speak to that briefly. Obviously, it's hard to pin down exact numbers, but we estimated that there's, in addition to the direct cost savings we're seeing with eliminating big culverts, we think there's several $100,000 or even as much as $1 million in savings in future storm drainage work that would be required for the build project. So those are direct kind of construction cost savings. And then other savings, things like trying to reduce fish entrapment in the ditch. The Fish, Wildlife and Parks was looking at spending several $100,000 on a fish screen that requires continual maintenance and cost there as well. So there's those benefits. And then of course the Riverbank Stabilization. Obviously there's a cost if we were to lose the trail or have damage to the stadium, but even just the work to stabilize that bank becomes more affordable by redirecting the channel. We don't have to armor the bank in the same way. So, I think the overall benefits are there's a cost benefit ratio here that's probably 2 to 1 or better in terms of the money we're spending up front here.
Okay, thanks. And that was really clear from the list of benefits in the presentation. And frankly, this project is one of the it's a shining example of how I am really proud of our city. This is a really good piece of business, and it was through a collaborative effort of staff to reach out and put this together for mutual benefit. And that's what government does at its best is pull together diverse stakeholders and achieve a great benefit to the greatest number of users. And this is just an excellent example. And every single stakeholder here has benefits that have monetary value. Whether it's the construction of infrastructure in the build grant area, whether it's the reduction in costs of private development, which will ultimately reduce the cost, ever so slightly of housing in this area, whether it's the benefits to habitat and to recreation and to our watersheds. It's win-win-win-win. Win-win-win, and it's government at its finest, and I commend you for doing this, and I'm incredibly supportive of it.
Well said, Mr. Hess. Next, I see Heather's hand up.
Thanks. Appreciate the presentation, Logan. And I'm going to just say ditto to what Jordan just said. I think, it's still at the end of the day, it's almost a $1 million ask. And I think what you've been able to outline today is really all the economic benefits that come along with the benefits of this acquisition, and things that we can't list today, such as just additional land for housing that our community desperately needs. But Logan, I guess the one question that lingers in my mind with this diversion structure that's going to take a couple of years before we can remove that. I just think about like decisions made in the past and the impacts that they have today. I'm sure that this whole process has been quite rigorous to make sure that whatever we do going forward is the least impactful to the riverbed. And I'm just kind of curious, how long ago was that decision made? Long ago, to put in that diversion structure, and just wondering why that happened in the very first place. And that might be something you may not be able to articulate.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I mean, it's well over 100 years that these water rights have been in place. And Julie probably has more history there. I don't know when the diversion was installed, but clearly irrigators and water right holders hold a lot of power in our state. And there's not a lot you can do to keep them from dumping rock and bringing their excavators out in the river and continuing to maintain these things. So I think it's just kind of shows you the power that water rights holds over our state. And so certainly getting that rock out of there and doing it in an environmentally safe manner, I guess, is an amazing opportunity. And yeah, I probably not giving you a very good answer, but I agree. It's unfortunate that we're here today having to spend this kind of money to do this work, because it's not going to be a cheap project to reshape the river. I don't have numbers of what that's going to be. We don't know how it's going to be paid for, but it definitely needs to happen. The river is really constricted in this area, and that diversion structure is the main reason why that case.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I see Julie's hand up. Go ahead, Julie.
Thanks. Yeah, the ditch was originally built, or the beginning of construction was in 1902. So it's been there almost 120 years now. And definitely Missoula looked a whole lot different when that was originally constructed. I want to say, as in my capacity as a WGM group employee, I've been working closely with staff on this, so I am not going to be voting on this, although I do very much support it, and I really appreciate all of Jordan's comments. I would like to just speak briefly to it, because this has been a really great process that I've gotten to see the kind of the inside of. This effort really came together through the willingness and hard work on the part of the board members and the shareholders of the Hellgate Valley Irrigation Company. So we're really grateful that they were open to this idea, and a lot of hard work on the side of staff at the city. This really is a landmark action. Many growing communities throughout the western states, not just in Montana, are struggling with outdated irrigation infrastructure that causes conflicts with growth and development. In Montana in particular, water rights and ditch rights are often viewed as this sacred cow, as Logan kind of alluded to, that it cannot be touched, even when common sense tells us that that infrastructure is no longer serving the need that it was originally designed for. So in addition to the city and the ditch company, as has been noted, we've had several other enthusiastic partners in this effort, including Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, the Clark Fork Coalition, Trout Unlimited. The Parks Department is going to play a big role here. So as Jordan said, there's wins all around. It's good for the river. It's good for the shareholders of the Hellgate Valley Irrigation Company. It's good for those who want to continue to use their water for agricultural use. And it's good for the city. It's good for the future development in the Subtupcane area. So I hope that others will follow Jordan's support of this effort. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Julie. Heidi.
I also am really excited about this purchase. I think it's the right thing to do for the health of our river. And I think it has a lot of exciting opportunity for, I guess, reclaiming some of the space that is now a ditch. I was wondering, I actually recently got an email about this. And I was wondering who the best staff person would be to connect that email to. And then also if there's a estimated timeline for the outreach to the property owners. I don't know if you're planning on just doing that after the sale is finalized, or if that's something that's already happening.
Well, some of it has happened. We've had conversations with a number of the big shareholders, that are most potentially benefiting from it. So, some of that's ongoing. I think we do want to kind of finalize what our approach is, in terms of, what we would ask for landowners to pay to relinquish the easement. So we need to kind of finish up, decide what that number should be. And then, we are going to do kind of a letter campaign or, reach out to the individual property owner. So, that should be happening, I guess Jeremy might want to weigh in. We have to get this closed by the end of October 31st, I believe, with the ditch company. So I don't know what Jeremy's thoughts are in terms of the timing of that landowner outreach, if that should wait until the closing occurs or not.
Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I think that, as Logan said, this is the first step in what is probably a larger project to do a lot of river restoration. And so we are looking at this acquisition as acquiring things that are valuable, water rights and easements. And we're going to do our best to convert at least a portion of that value back into money that we can monetize that to use toward those future things that need to happen in the river. So we have already reached out to landowners, and we'll follow up again now that should council move forward with this to talk about those next steps. I think that's part of making this viable for us. We were really fortunate that we got so much support from the various stakeholders that are involved in getting the initial funding together, that we didn't have to seek additional money from landowners in order to make the acquisition happen. But we do know there's still a bigger project to do, and we're going to need to continue to work on that. So I think continuing to try to capitalize the value of what we're acquiring here is going to be important. And I just also wanted to say thanks to the folks that have participated in doing this. I was a doubter when we started into this, when it was put in front of me. I didn't think it was possible, and people being collaborative and thinking outside the box is what made this happen. And not the least of which Councilperson Merritt, who I think was probably the first person to suggest this idea. So credit where credit is due. Appreciate all the work that's gone into it.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. We have a motion on the floor, and let me check we have a couple of people in attendance. If you would like to provide comment on the motion, please do so at this time. Okay, seeing none, we will take a roll call vote, please, Ashley.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
I abstain.
Vasika,
Yes.
West. West.
You said yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mirta, I was a few minutes late joining.
Oh, so we need Brian as well.
Okay, Von Mossberg.
Yes.
Okay, that is 8 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 abstain.
Great. Okay, so that motion passes, and we will have that on our consent agenda. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Logan, for the presentation, and you and Jeremy for all your work on this. And of course, thank you, Julie, for participating on this.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Our next item on the agenda, if I can get here we go. A right-of-way agreement amendment with AGH LLC. And Jeremy, are you presenting that one?
Yes, I'll take this one.
Okay.
And if it's okay, I'm going to talk about both of the agenda items that are remaining. We have 2 right-of-way agreement amendments. And
Great.
they're similar and they're different. So I'm going to talk about each one, and then feel free to weigh in with any questions. So when we made the decision to delay the build project, we had higher than expected costs, and we had to go back and retool and look at funding again. So we delayed the start of the build project until next spring. We have several projects that were actively under development, private development projects that were moving quickly and that were relying on the build project in order to provide access and other improvements that are needed for their developments. So we had to pivot a little bit on these agreements and figure out a way to get them functional with their development. And that meant that they needed to construct some of the elements of the build project sooner rather than later. So working with these developers, we've come up with modifications to the agreements that allow them to go ahead and build those improvements, and created some funding mechanisms through these agreements to make that happen. So the two developments in particular are the Hellgate Villages project happening right here. This is the Mary Jane Boulevard corridor. So Hellgate Village, and the VA project, the VA clinic that is going in as part of the Rocky Mountain Beverage subdivision, which was Summit Beverage, and the VA clinic up at the north end of Broadway. In the case of Hellgate Villages, this is HEH. It's the first agreement on the agenda. They're pretty far along with developing the east side of the property, and they need Mary Jane Boulevard for access. And so the agreement modifies the right-of-way agreement for them to go in and construct this portion of Mary Jane Boulevard. So they'll finish this short section of Mary Jane Boulevard, which provides them with access for emergency vehicles, as well as occupancy for those houses that are, many of which are nearly complete. And the way we worked out the funding on this is to do a credit for future impact fees. So they will be constructing about 55 total units, I believe, on both sides of Mary Jane. And we calculated what we believe their future impact fees would be, to be about $380,000 roughly. And negotiating the cost of the construction for this road, that came out to be about $365,000. And so we'll issue a credit for those future impact fees in lieu of them, or in exchange for them doing the construction. So this is construction that would have happened through the build project, and they would have paid for a portion of it through impact fees, per the special transportation impact fee that we put in place for the Mullen area. So it's a way of actually helping our project, because it brings additional funding into the project sooner. They're basically advancing that money to construct this piece of the road, and then we will reflect that in credits later. So it doesn't have an immediate financial effect, but it will affect the future phases of the build project and future year CIPs. So in the referral, we discussed a credit towards future impact fees that will be included in future year CIPs, and we'll show that as in the accounting as a debit recorded against the CIP. So it's it's a future liability that the build CIP will have. Switching to the other one, this is the R&B agreement. This one's a little bit different. The VA clinic is looking to be complete by November. So they'll have the site and shell of the building done, and then the VA comes in and does their final furniture and equipment outfitting of the building over the next few months, and they plan to open in January or February. So again, they needed access. We needed to make sure we had emergency access and eventually public access available. So the agreement with R&B is for them to construct a short portion of Mary Jane down to Veterans Way, which is this street here, the street is now built. If you've been out there, this looks a whole lot different than it does in this photo. So that they'll do a temporary road that'll connect to the Veterans Way and allow access to the new VA clinic. We will still need to come in and finish this road. We'll finish the curb and gutter and sidewalk with the build project at a later date. And in this case, the subdivision had an improvements guarantee, and the cost sharing on that is that we were looking at doing 50% of the cost with the build project and 50% of the cost with the improvements guarantee for the subdivision. So we're applying that improvements guarantee. It comes up a little bit short of what the total cost would be for their 50%. So you'll see in the agreement that we agreed to contribute $50,000 toward the cost of that road construction. So there will be a cash payment made to RMB, who is hiring the contractor to do that work, in the amount of $50,000. So happy to answer any questions on those. I know they're fairly complicated agreements, but this was a way of making sure that we are able to keep them moving along and meet their timelines while continuing to work on the larger build project.
Thanks, Jeremy. Are there any questions from council members? Jordan, go ahead.
Not really a question. I appreciate staff working to keep this project on track, and it's a complex project with a lot of moving parts, and I'm happy to make the recommended motion.
Thank you. And Julie.
I was just gonna put the motion on the floor, so happy to support it.
Okay, thank you. We have, so are we making the motion for, let's do two motions if that's easier for staff to track.
Do you want me to make, I'm sorry, do you want me to make just the one at a time?
We can, yeah, that would be
Whatever's easiest.
just a little cleaner, I think. But you make both.
But I'm sorry, I was just going back to the agenda. I'm happy, yeah, I can separate them out into two. But I'd be happy to make both. It's Word 2 Day in the Public Works Committee.
Yeah, that sounds good. So we have a motion on the floor for item 3.2. And I'll check for any public comment. Seeing none, we will take a roll call vote, please, Ashley.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
That is 10 yeses and 0 nos.
Great, thanks, Ashley. And now we also have a motion for item 3.3 on the floor and still no public comment. So we will take a roll call vote on that one too, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Okay, 10 yeses and 0 nos.
Great, thank you, Ashley. And that too will go on our consent agenda. That was our last item on the agenda. So thank you, Jeremy and everyone. And this was an exciting day on Public Works. Got lots of good things happening. Thank you.
Thank you all.
We adjourned.